Good evening, all, and welcome to episode 3 of Mathematical Morality. This week is the episode I promised last episode, which is basically the mathematics of prediction. To give you an example of what we're looking at, I'd like you to take a look at this little paint drawing I came up with. You notice that there's a series of circles and ellipses here which are kind of scattered about the thing, right? You'd think that these are pretty randomly set, but there actually is a problem with this. Because of the fact that I set these up at random, there's actually a pattern to these setups, which is not truly random because no human activity ever is. Now, imagine that each of these circles or oval spots was a crime that I had committed. Well, here's the funny part. Because of the distribution of where these crimes are on an XY coordinate axis of a map, that little star right there might just be where my home base of operations is. And there's actually a system called Geographical Profiling, which was developed by Kim Rosmo back in the 1990s, which used basically linear algebra to predict the zone, marked by the star in this case, of where the home base of a serial offender of any sort might be. However, it's actually gotten a lot more advanced in the last few years. Back in 2009, a gentleman by the name of Mike O'Leary from the Department of Mathematics at Townsend University published this paper on how to do the exact same thing using conditional probability. Basically, in this case, it's the probability of a given anchor point or base of operations, given the likelihood of a given that a particular crime has occurred in a particular location. However, it gets better. Because of the fact that this is all based on conditional probability, one can infer a lot more based on probability than just the basic location of a particular issue or of a particular home base. They've gotten a lot better with regards to models for offender behavior, to the point where even in this paper, they literally have a capability of doing particular future offense prediction for a given serial offender. Basically, what this is once you've actually found the home base of operations of your given serial offender, the probability of crime location next, given all the other locations, is actually given by the probability of X next given the probability of Z. And basically, you set this up as a triple integral problem, which any second university student can solve once the second-year university student can solve once the integral is set up, or any computer can solve once the integral is set up. And you're able to determine with high degree of probability what the next area or zone of or target might be of a given serial offender. This could be anything from a serial rapist to a serial arsonist to a serial burglar to even a serial killer. So given the fact that this particular issue has come up, if we put it back, just to translate this for you, this given equation here, or this other version of it, can be used in such a way so as to be able to set up, let's use this cross star here, that depending on what pattern I'm using, they might be able to predict where my next crime zone is where my next crime is going to be. So as a serial offender, all of this distribution of where my crimes are and my base of operations gives a very high probability of being able to predict exactly where I'm going to strike next. And Professor O'Leary has gone a lot farther with this. He's actually, if we actually take a look at his own website, he's developing tools for this. He's developed a technical report submitted to the National Institute of Justice. There's a butt ton of papers he's published on this for and related presentations. Like I said, this particular mathematician has gone incredibly far in doing work on predicting crime. But here's the interesting thing is, let's assume for the sake of argument that is this a legitimate form. What are the moral implications of this? Well, let's go back to the map again for a second. What would happen if I actually knew that the police were actually using this kind of profiling tactic? Well, knowing that if I knew about how my distribution was influencing my particular choice, and I also had access to the same formula as they did, I could possibly calculate the high probability area of where they were predicting I would go next. And then I could go somewhere radically different, say on the exact opposite side of the map, and actually turn this into my zone of attack for my next crime. So there are some possible problems in this that may show up. But that aside, there's also some other ways that crime has gotten particularly predictive. If you'll look in the comments, but if you'll look in the links below, you'll notice that I actually referenced a couple of videos, one of which here, The Mathematics of Crime, where they talk about, let me see here. Yeah, they talk about the fact that earthquakes have a sort of subsidence factor, and they were able to demonstrate using this that they've been able to even set up things like temporal patterns of IED usage in the IRA, and they were even able to get it as far as burglary attacks, which are covered right over here. So the thing is that they're actually able to predict hotspots. Let me see here. Where do they put it? Well, maybe not in this video. But the thing is that they've been able to predict such things as hotspots for where burglaries are likely to happen after the first burglaries have been committed. There are even police departments in the United States and Canada who are currently using software based on these models, and are able to more quickly anticipate where to put police officers to watch for burglars. They've even gotten to the point where, according to Dr. Hannah Fry from the UCL in London, they are even able to get to the point where they are able to predict how riots will spread based on given data from the London riots. So with all of this mathematical predictive power, the question remains, if we go back to the map, what is the moral thing to do here? What is the appropriate moral circumstance on this? Well, if these criminal capabilities are if these mathematics are incredibly predictive, then personally I think that depending on whether or not life and limb are in danger, or life and property are in danger, then I personally recommend that use of these particular tactics, mathematical tactics, actually be used to be able to predict whether or not the crime zones can be predicted. And if it turns out that the criminal has actually figured out that the crime zone is predicted here and therefore goes here, then in an ever-evolving war against crime, researchers could possibly figure out, oh well, maybe if I've predicted here, then he'll go to the next low probability area, which is over here, and thus be able to incorporate his models to the point where the second star is the one that is actually predicted by the model. Geographical profiling has gotten very much more advanced in the last few years with multiple variable models and such things like that. And as for whether or not it is moral to use to predict where a crime is going to take place, well, personally, I would also have to answer that we may have to define what crime is, but that's going to be for another video. And as for whether or not this kind of predictive power is actually moral to use, well, if it actually has an efficacious result, i.e., if it actually does predict accurately where the crime is going to take place, let's say, for example, that it actually does predict accurately that the crime is going to take place here, then, to a high degree of probability, then I'd say, why not use it? Because police are strapped for resources, and they are meant to protect the public. So if this technology can be used in a way that will actually save life and limb, I'd say go for it. I would also say, however, apparently the budgie decided to chirp in on this one. The only other thing that I would have concerns about, though, is the fact that if this increased surveillance were being used to anticipate political protests by groups, that might be a different story. So it's basically about whether or not the use of the tool is like any other tool. It's very much about how you use it. And frankly, I would argue that there needs to be a systematic change whereby regimes are not oppressive and are not able to use this kind of tech. But other than that, I'd say by all means go for it. Anyway, this has been the profiling episode for mathematics and for mathematical morality. Stay tuned for next week. I don't exactly know what subject I've got planned yet, but it's bound to be interesting either way. Signing off.